Another episode of the My Love of Golf podcast. Well, we've got another special episode, and it's actually going to be part of a special series, an ongoing series around golf rules. Golf rules are a topic that come up every time you play golf, and I've come to the realization that I don't know enough about the golf rules. You think I would, but many of you out there are always looking to learn about golf rules. Well, I've found the perfect person to help us, Blakey. I know him as Blakey. You might know him as Golf Rules Questions. But Blakey is going to come on a, let's call it a semi-regular basis, and we're going to answer your hot topics in the golf rules world. Really lucky to have Blakey on board. He is one of the most knowledgeable people around golf rules in the globe, and Blakey is going to join us on the My Love of Golf podcast. It's going to be good, so sit back, relax, enjoy this episode with Blakey from Golf Rules Questions. Blakey, how are you, sir?
Very good, Ross. How are you?
Very good, mate. Very good, mate. I've just introduced you, and I've said to the listeners that we're going to do this on a semi-regular basis because, well, I definitely don't know enough about the golf rules. You think that I would, but I know that the listeners are always asking questions, and I told them that there's no one better in the planet to ask those questions and to answer those questions to is you. Blakey from Golf Rules Questions, welcome to the first segment of, what are we going to call it, Blakey? Roscoe and Blakey's Golf Rules Questions?
I'm not one for being creative around titles, but we can work on that. It's a title and work.
I'll do the creative. You do the answers. Hey, mate. Once again, thanks for joining us. So, some of the people that are listening may know you from your Instagram page, Golf Rules Questions. But if you don't know Blakey, David Blakey, we're going to stick with. Give us the elevator intro. We've just met on the golf course or in the elevator coming up from the car park into the lovely clubhouse. And I go, g'day, mate, how you going? Who are you? How do you come back?
Well, first things first, Ross, I'd be honoured to be playing at a golf course that has an elevator in the clubhouse.
I can only think of one.
Couple out there.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
So I have a love of golf just like you, so that's a good start. How did I get into knowing the rules of golf? I worked out that accounting wasn't for me. After 2 years, I'd had enough of that. So I gave that away and somehow stumbled into being a referee, I guess. I sort of call myself a referee. It's the easiest way to describe it, but really I'm just a sounding board for people asking questions via email and phone, and also providing educational workshops through my job at Golf Australia. So I used to be at Golf Victoria, and now we've merged, and I work at Golf Australia, basically doing the same thing. I don't play as much golf as I used to, but I certainly am around it every day and watching and learning and listening to people playing golf and specifically around the rules of the game. Something that I've always had, it's a strange realization, but the rules of the golf have always been something that I've been wanting to know or passionate about, I guess is what you'd say, slightly obsessed. And I remember doing my first rules test back when I was 15 years old.
Where was that? Was that over here?
No, that was in New Zealand. And I had no idea. I really had no idea what I was actually doing. It was just a case of, I hated being out on the golf course, and I bet you this happens to many of your listeners. I just hated being out on the golf course, and someone would say, oh, you can't do that. Or did you know you could have dropped it here instead? And I was like, well, how am I supposed to learn this? And then, I found out that I could go to a rules exam. Have you ever thought to go to a rules test or a rules course, rules workshop?
Me personally? I have actually thought about it, because I saw one of the members at the club who had been commented on about doing maybe the level 2 course that you run, and I definitely saw it in the newsletter, and I thought, that's a good thing to do, to have more people who are in and around the club that are qualified to adjudicate and to be giving advice on the rules. So I'd thought about it, but would it be something that I'd go and do? Maybe not. Probably not at my age, and I probably just wouldn't do it. I'm one of the herd, mate. I'm not the one that sort of comes out and says, I'm actually going to do something about this in relation to golf rules. So no, but I think that's a great thing that people can do.
I know that in this is just a little bit off topic, but I know that in some countries in Europe specifically, you have to have passed the rules test before you're allowed to actually play the game.
Yeah, I've heard that. I think in Germany is one of those said countries, and some of the other like Scandinavian countries, like you have to have a golf license.
Yeah, golf license. That's right.
Yeah, go on.
We don't implemented that here because that's just a massive barrier to entry. We want to get as many people playing the game as possible, and then they'll learn the rules and they'll learn the code of conduct through other people that they play with. And the club hopefully is welcoming of them and able to teach them the rules as they go, basically. Like, how many sports are there out there that you actually learn the game, learn the rules as you play?
Well, there's not as many games with as many rules as we've got. We're very rule dominated and rule oriented, I would suggest. So, but all these other games have rules officials and have, they're encouraging people to go and learn rules, like the footy rules officials people. All the clubs are always trying to get more people involved, but at our level and our game, it is, I would imagine, a far more detailed set of topics that you're working with and around that people need to have a very well developed understanding of before they can be qualified to give advice on them.
Yeah, I mean, the first and foremost principle of playing the game is that you know the rules of golf yourself, and then you have the honesty and integrity to play the game under those rules. Because if you're not playing by the rules, then you're not actually playing the game of golf.
Yeah.
If you're just going out there socially, having a hit, then do you really need to worry about the rules? No. If you're not handing a card in for handicapping or you're not playing in a competition, then just go out and enjoy yourself. Don't damage the course in any untoward manner, but just go out, work on your game so that when you are playing in a competition, you're playing to your best and playing under the rules of golf.
You know what? It just made me think, because there's a number of times when I come across players who are new to a club environment, and I've been a member of 2 clubs down here in Victoria since I retook the game up, and they were new to the competition environment, but they weren't new to golf, but they'd been playing in that social space, like you just articulated, playing with their mates, but they're all playing fairly competitively, whether they're playing for a buck or a beer or a cordial or whatever it is, in a social environment. But they're all playing by their version of the rules, their understanding of the rules. So when they make the next step into clubland, because the guys at the footy club or the cricket club have said, mate, you should come and play comp with us because it's awesome. We bet for $100 and we have a heap of beers at the end. They bring those social rules, and someone always has to be the breaker of the news to say, oh mate, that's actually not where you take the drop, or that's not how you take relief. When you lose the ball, you actually, when you're out of bounds, you actually have to go back to the tee. You don't drop one up near the fence. And I don't know, is that something you think happens? Is that? Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah.
You've just detailed golf in Australia.
Yeah.
People say, oh, I don't really play by the rules. The rules are so confusing. I don't need to worry about them. Let's just get on and play. But those same people, they'll hold some versions of the rules. As you said, they've sort of crafted their own rules. They'll hold them in high esteem, Oh, you can't do this, you can do this. But then the ones that they haven't learnt, they don't really hold them in such high esteem. So they are playing by a set of rules, and they are playing quite rigidly with them. Even if it's for $1, it's just the fact that because, as you said before, the rules of golf can be quite complicated. There's no doubting that they are complicated. They have tried to make them, lessen off their complication, their confusion, decrease their confusion a little bit with their update that happened at the start of last year. But if you think about it, you've got say you have a tennis court. The tennis court dimensions don't change day to day. The net's always the same height. The width for a singles match is always the same, and the length. You play on clay or grass or hard court, so there's 3 different surfaces. When was the last time you saw a toilet in the middle of a tennis court? Like, there's toilets, there's buildings, there's sand traps, there's water that's supposed to be there, there's water that's not supposed to be there, there's grass that's growing and grass that's not growing, and tree roots are there. And of course, if you have trees, you're going to have tree roots. So the people somehow want relief from them.
Strange coloured paint marks on the ground. There's some white circles and there's some yellow circles, and then there's some red lines and yellow bits of wood and white bits of wood and red bits of wood and all this crazy stuff that, I think people don't fully understand, even still, lateral and...
Yeah, spot on. There's just so much that makes up a game of golf, makes up a golf course, that you need to have a rule for every situation, or at least 90% of those situations you need to have a rule for, because we have a saying on the pro circuit that there's an 80% chance that a 5% situation will happen 80% of the time. It's sort of that Murphy's Law type situation. We've been 60 metres off the edge of the fairway marking out of bounds just in case that one time someone hits it that far left or that far over the back of the green. If you don't mark it, it'll happen. I had a situation about 4 years ago, PGA Championship in Australia, where we'd gone around, we'd done a course inspection. One of the holes had a brick wall. Now the brick wall was like the rough was down at my here, and then the brick wall went up to about my chest, and then from that brick wall was the person's lawn, so the neighbouring house of the course, their lawn. So you can, it's almost head height where the chairs and tables were, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And so the rule at the time was ball's out of bounds once it goes past the brick wall. Not, say, if you have two stakes for an out of bounds, all of the ball has to be past the course side of the stakes,
mm-hmm.
right? Whereas for a brick wall at the time, you actually have to be on the other side or past the outside of the brick wall. Yeah, the out of bounds side, not the inside, not the course side, the outside. That sounds confusing in itself, but this ball actually happened to end up on top of the wall, kind of on top of the wall, and kind of actually in this person's lawn. And so was it out of bounds? Was it in bounds? We deemed that it was out of bounds eventually, but...
So the player was arguing, if you get your theodolite out and laser measure it, there's a dimple worth of ball still on the brick wall side of the wall. Therefore, it's a dimple worth in bounds. Is that what the argument was in that case?
In this case, it was a little bit simpler because I was standing there and I just said it's out of bounds. But looking at it afterwards, then you double guess, or you second guess yourself, and you're like, oh, was that correct? So we had a chat about it afterwards. The player's oblivious to this. He wasn't arguing. He didn't, he'd had a terrible shot. Yeah. But, was the ball... It's just funny because that incident would have never occurred. I would have never had the second guess because the year prior and the 5 years prior to that, they'd put a white paint line at the bottom of the brick wall, meaning that it was guaranteed to be out where that ball was. So it just so happened that we didn't, doing the course setup, they didn't put the white line, and then so suddenly the brick wall was the outside of the brick wall, not the inside.
So, mate, you just mentioned that was at the Australian PGA. As part of your your introduction to the My Love of Golf listeners, what are some of the other tournaments that you and your role have been able to or expected to officiate and participate at?
So within my role, I've obviously got the Australian Women's Open in Adelaide the last 5 years, the Australian Men's Open, which has been in Sydney for the last nearly 10 years. I think I've done about 7 of them. And this year it's at Kingston Heath in Melbourne. If it goes ahead, hopefully everything's right as rain by end of November. So those two, then the Vic Open, which has gotten a lot bigger in recent years. Then worked with the PGA Tour of Australasia on their PGA Championship, Fiji International, which is maybe coming back, who knows. The New Zealand Open, that's probably my favourite tournament, the New Zealand Open. I didn't get there this year, but I had done it the last 5 years. It's basically a big pro-am, but it's an awesome tournament in an amazing region of the world, Queenstown.
Just let you know that one of the previous winners has been guest on the My Love of Golf podcast previously. Just, Matty Griffin. Shout out to Matty Griffin.
Yeah. Well, he's quite a successful golfer around Australia and also up in Japan as well.
Absolutely.
Last year I had the amazing opportunity to go and work with the European Tour for 4 tournaments in a row. So I've worked with them previously, just as I mentioned, with the Vic Open and the Australian PGA. So tournaments in Australia or around Australia. But last year I got to go and referee at the BMW PGA Championship at Wentworth. Amazing. We had amazing weather, huge crowds every day. They also put on a music festival on the weekend, so that was unbelievable. Then the Dunhill Links, so that's sort of similar to the New Zealand Open or AT&T, the Pro-Am.
Yeah, Pebble Beach, yep.
Because they do a few courses. They do Carnoustie, St Andrews, the Old Course, and Kingsbarns. So I was refereeing at Kingsbarns for 3 days and then refereed at St Andrews. Then the Spanish Open and the Italian Open. So that was amazing. I was actually supposed to be leaving on Monday, this coming Monday, for the Dell match play, Austin, Texas. But obviously, with everything that's going on, that is being canned at this stage.
Yeah, we are recording this in the midst of the coronavirus stuff that's going on, and golf's basically being cancelled all around the world. So it's a challenging time. Blakey and all his colleagues are working from home, as are many people. So, yeah, it was obviously sad to hear that all the golf's being cancelled, but, sad for you, mate, that you won't get to go across there and do that. But I'm sure that those opportunities will quickly come back. The BMW in Wentworth, was there a standout situation that happened there? Something rings my bell that something happened there that's worth talking about, but I can't really remember. I remember Danny Willett was the winner, and my guy Rocket likes to call the runner-up the Thumb. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Rocket's names, but John Rahm he refers to as the Thumb. He reckons he looks like a thumb, but I can't see it myself. But that's what Rocket names is actually hashtag Rocket names is a thing. But was there anything that stood out there?
Apart from the amazing weather, the fact that for myself, the music festival on the Saturday night, I mean, it was raining on the Sunday, but people still turned up. What's his name? Ross Fisher.
Yeah.
Hold out for Albatross on the 18th to win BMW Speedster.
Was P. Reid? We couldn't have a rules discussion without going to P. Reid, but P. Reid was like T4 in that. That was before.
Yes.
He's had. Look, we've said it numerous times, and there's that many podcasts that have said it. He's had numerous rules infractions along the journey, but that was before that he had the sand issue, yeah? Yeah,
the sand issue was end of November because that was in the Bahamas.
Yeah, that's right.
And that was, and then he had to come to Australia. Oh, it might have been actually mid-December. Oh, that's right, it was. It was at Tiger Woods' tournament, mid-December in the Bahamas. And so then he had to come to the President's Cup the week after, and he actually, he did really well there. He was a bit of a mess in the USA team, but they rallied around him, and he was able to fight his way through and had a superb victory in the singles, much to every international fan's disliking. So
before we get into what I explained to the listeners at the start is that we might do this on a somewhat semi-regular basis, and we'll engage with our guys and try and get some questions and use it as a real tool for people to, if we can provide some benefit in learning the rules, let's do it through here, and we'll get you back on, whether it's once every few weeks. So I would like to maybe just start off with, let's talk about the rule changes that happened this year, because I still think that there's some questions around that, and then we might answer some. Talk about some of the little quirky things that we've uncovered. Like while we raise P. Reid, as I said, we're always going to talk about it because it's the most obvious and topical sort of rules infraction. What was the story there, mate? From your industry perspective, you saw the vision as millions of us did around the world. What was going on there?
So with the Patrick Reed thing, it was in Tiger's tournament in the Bahamas, mid-December, and he's in a waste bunker. It's not a bunker. It is sand, but it's not a bunker because it's not maintained as a bunker. There's no rake there in case you have a shot. It's a waste bunker. So you are allowed to ground your club in the sand in a waste bunker. You can touch the sand lightly, and taking your club away in the backswing, which is unlike a bunker. But he's gone and tried to work out what shot he's going to play. He's got a wedge in his hand, and he's what looks to be deliberately swept some sand away twice from behind his ball. Now, the rules breach is that he's improved his conditions affecting the stroke. The only way he'd get out of that was if it was 2 meters away or a meter away, outside of that area of intended swing or outside the lie of the ball. But it was pretty close to the ball, so there's really a breach there. Now, if you sort of accidentally did that, you'd incur the penalty, and you just say, I didn't even realise. His defence was it was a bad camera angle. So to most people listening to that, suddenly they were like, oh, hang on, he's not trying to just say that it was an accident and take the penalty. He's trying to say it never actually happened that way, and millions of people are watching the way that it actually happened. So he sort of got himself into trouble then in terms of the public outcry, because as we talked about before, the game is built on integrity and honesty, and to most people that didn't seem like a high level of integrity.
My guy Rocket also has another name for one of the other players, Matt Kuchar. He calls him Steam Shovel.
Yeah.
So there was another wasteland type scenario there where he was allowed to move loose impediments. Now, to many of us, when he moved the loose impediments around the ball, it would appear that he was moving multiple grains of sand. And by the time he had finished moving the loose impediments, he had effectively, in my vision, improved his lie. He built a little track around the back of the ball. So, from the golfer's perspective, who are listening, he can then therefore get his leading edge of the club into that ball and hit a much more effective shot rather than a shot where there's sand between the ball and the club face. Now, that was deemed to be okay as well.
See, that one there, was it deemed to be okay? It was...
Well, there was a rules official standing there watching him do it.
Yeah, and some players, it's probably easier to go this way, some players will try on everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the players going, oh, is this okay? Is this okay? And sort of not giving the referee a chance to actually speak. And then the last thing the referee would want would be to say, oh, sorry, you're penalised, when they were watching the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, and Matt seems to be, again, getting a bit of a reputation for pushing the boundaries of the rules.
Mm.
And unfortunately, it's coming across detrimental to his public
persona.
How the public view him. So the referee didn't necessarily agree with what he did, but was of the opinion that she's right there and didn't want to give Matt a penalty when she was supposed to be supervising what he was actually doing. Now, he was trying in a reasonable manner to remove the loose impediments, the bigger pebbles. It just so happened that he unreasonably removed some of the smaller pebbles, or more commonly known as grains of sand, which are not loose impediments, not permitted to be moved.
Well, let's bring this right back to your everyday golfer level on a Saturday at the club. The example being is, and you see this, unfortunately, occasionally you see it at clubland, but the player's ball is, he's hit a cut off the tee, it's out there on a hard pan surface, a bit of dirt, the player walks up, moves the twigs, moves the leaves, that's all cool, and then unceremoniously just then grabs maybe a couple of fingers and just goes wipe, and a little bit of cloud of dust comes up, and they've effectively moved the top layer of the soil off, therefore providing better access to the back end of the ball, and they just would think that that's just okay, loose impediments, but it's absolutely not.
No, that's right. Your sand or dirt is not a loose impediment, so if you're doing that kind of action, then you're probably doing it for a reason, and that reason would be to improve your lie. So therefore, improving your lie or for improving your conditions affecting the stroke under Rule 8.1, you'd be incurring a general penalty.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, if your ball is in such a situation, basically just play it as it lies. Leave it alone. You don't have to even ground your club in those situations, and just play it. Or if you want, just take an unplayable. But I think what you're sort of leaning towards is what we sort of talked about before about, there's some rules that people are sticklers for, and there's some rules which they're a bit more lenient. And that club golfer, he goes out on a Saturday, he wants to enjoy his round. Suddenly he's got dog poo on his ball. He's not going to say, he's going to say to his fellow competitors, "Oh, surely I get a drop here. This is I can't be having dog poo on my ball." The rule states play it as it lies or take an unplayable, but he's just out there playing, or she's just out there playing once a week, out there to enjoy her golf. She doesn't want to be having to deal with the situation that's not normally there. So you can see how some people just sort of stretch the rules to their benefit.
And just talking about the pros there for a minute, we've picked on the two obvious ones. We haven't brought anything new to the table there, but for every couple of examples like that, and there's only a couple that you can think about in recent times, there's plenty of examples of pros who have lost tournaments, and I forget the guy's name. You may remember it, but the guy at Harbour Town that was in the 18th on the left hand side, was in a position to get up and down, and you couldn't even see it, and the ball, he just called it. No one saw it. There wasn't any official there, and he just called himself on it and lost the tournament.
Yeah, there was. I love to say his name's Brian Davis or something like that.
I think you're right. Yep.
I mean, that was amazing. If he had touched, because this was back when the water hazard days when you couldn't ground your club, and then he touched a loose. I think he touched a loose impediment in the water hazard, and so then he incurs the
penalty.
What we call now the general penalty, the 2 shots, and so obviously he lost the tournament, but came second because that was in the playoff. Yeah, I think it was Brian Davis. He's had a couple because I've put him on my rules channel a couple of times. I think he's had about 3 rulings that I know of
that have gone the other way.
The one was okay, that one there, and then there was another one that was just a funny one or a stupid one. It might have been like his ball was on the green and a bird stole it or something like that. Something stupid.
Yeah, there was a few of those too. We might leave the bird stealing the ball rule officiating for the future episode. But you mentioned the touching and what was then a water hazard. The rules of golf changed significantly at the start of this year.
Start of last year.
Sorry. I think that there are still a number of people that haven't grasped some of the changes. Still walk around most weeks with sort of second guessing. What were the key things that changed in the rules of golf at the start of last year, Blakey?
So one of the key things was the flag stick, which I think is amazing or really good. It means that you can actually leave the flag stick in when you're putting on the putting green. When you make a stroke at a ball on the putting green, you can actually hit the flag stick that's in the hole unattended, and there's no penalty. That's such a simple change, and it really hasn't. It's been so good for the game. A lot of people came out and said, people are damaging the hole. There was a little bit of that where people are leaving the flag stick in to retrieve their ball, which is annoying, and then by doing that they were damaging the hole. Then the R&A came out and said, well, we can change the equipment standards, and that just happened at the start of this year, and you can put one of those flimsy cups or whatever at the bottom of the flag stick that actually pulls the ball out. So a few clubs and courses have introduced that, but the flag stick, if you're on the green 40 foot away, everyone else is grabbing their putter and you're ready to play, you can just, you could just play. Before, you'd sort of just have to wait till someone had to attend or remove the flag stick. It doesn't matter anymore. You just play, and if you manage to hole a 40 footer, fantastic. It's you don't have to worry about hitting the flag stick. You'll see now, because of that change, not many people actually attend the flag stick anymore. Maybe on the pro circuit, but in club golf you hardly have see anyone tend the flagstick. They either just leave it in or leave it out, which means less people hanging around the hole and less chance of that hole building up like a volcano at the end of the day, and those 3-footers become a little bit tougher. So that's a good one. Another one was repairing damage on the putting green. So you have spike marks or pitch marks. You could always repair pitch marks, but you didn't know whether it was a spike mark or a pitch mark. You can go ahead and repair spike marks. Any damage that's caused by someone, person, or outside influence, provided it's not in normal maintenance practices from the green staff. So that was a good change. The penalty areas is a massive change. You can default penalty areas to be red. They don't have to default as yellow. So that's really good. So you can get that lateral drop anywhere.
So just explain the difference there between that red and yellow and what you're talking about there.
With yellow, the easiest way to think about it is with yellow, it's the design of a yellow water hazard is perpendicular to your line of play. So the challenge is you have to hit over it. Mm-hmm. Whereas a red one, the design is parallel to the line of play. So the challenge is don't hit sideways. Mm-hmm. So that's what it's been for hundreds of years. And then they thought about it and they're like, well, it's not going to happen at Augusta. They're going to keep them as yellow, but at other courses where they're not too fussed about that kind of design, and you spin your ball back in to a red penalty area, you can actually drop on the other side closer to the green. Does that make sense? So the yellow goes across, yep. Red goes up and down. And for a yellow one, you have two. You have your option of playing as it lies, or you have two penalty options: go back to your last place played, or back on a line, or within one club length of a line, back behind the yellow penalty area, in line with the last point of entry in the flag. So those are your two penalty options. With the red one, you have those two penalty options plus the lateral relief, which is dropping within 2 club lengths, no closer to the hole, of the last point of entry.
So, example being, I don't know if you remember the first hole south course at Peninsula.
Yes.
So we have the hazard on the side of the green, directly on the side of the green. So it's almost like the putting surface goes up to is the definition of the hazard.
See, I remember the old one. I actually didn't see it last week when we played there.
The south course, it's red.
It's a short par.
Yeah,
it's
short
like
par.
almost a drivable par 4, but you never try and drive it.
Yeah, so so Mike Cocking's put the water hazard right on the abutted edge of the first green.
Yep.
So you're chipping over that hazard, ball lands on the green, and to use your example, you rip it back off, and it goes into the hazard.
Yep.
You therefore are dropping on the green.
Is it yellow or red?
I'm sure it's red.
So if it's red, as long as it's no nearer the hole, within 2 club lengths of that last point of entry, if that's on the green, then you can drop on the green.
Yeah. So then that's if your ball's travelling over the hazard and you rip it back off the green and it comes into the point of entry is
your last point of entry.
So it's landed on the green and spun backwards towards you. The point of entry is on the green side. Is that correct?
Correct.
So then if you're playing from the other side of the green and you scun one over the green, past the hole, and then into the creek, okay, that's good. Yep, I got that because your point of entry. So your point of entry is on the green side. So it is possible. It is possible to drop it on the green. Yes,
it is. There are a few situations where you can drop your ball on the green.
Because it's just a weird feeling. Rules aside, it's just a weird feeling to be able to drop a ball onto the green.
If you have that last point of entry and part of, say, the first club length is just the fringe,
yes.
So the general area,
yeah,
and the second club length is the green,
yes.
If you drop your ball and it hits the green and within the relief area and rolls onto the fringe, you have to drop it again. So it must stay. You're allowed to drop in either area, but it must stay in the area that it first touched when you dropped. So if you drop it in the fringe and it rolls onto the green, you've got to re-drop. And then you could choose to drop it on the green, and then if it rolls off, you get to place it.
Yeah, right. So if you dropped it in the fringe and then had to re-drop because it's rolled back into the hazard, and then you say, well, I'm going to move it over there a foot, and that's dropping it on the green, and it stays on the green, then you're putting.
You are putting.
Yeah, cool.
I mean, even if it rolled off into the fringe, I'd putt because I can't chip.
You're the biggest. You know, your golf banditry will come out in this series of podcasts. You know, playing. I'm not going to give it away now, but you know, you're the best, sweetest ball striking 10 handicapper that I've seen. But you know, that's a story for another day. But the other thing in the penalty areas there, which are now called penalty areas, not water hazards, is that you can ground your club.
Ground your club. I mean, amazing. I didn't think I'd like this, and now I just don't care. I'm like, fantastic. It means less things that I have to look out for when I'm refereeing.
Yep.
You take practice swings, move loose impediments. It's brilliant.
Loose impediments in the bunker. There's another one. So I asked you a little question about that. So little rocks cigarette butts and, you know, lease. You can just move all that very carefully. Just place that out of the way. As long as you're not removing sand and altering your lie, but you can remove those rocks and those nasty little gremlins that would sometimes, you know, be responsible for damaging your new clubs, and you might have to come down and see me and get some new ones. But things like that, you can move that as long as it's not embedded in the sand. Is that right? Or
no, you can because there's not many things that would be embedded in the sand.
Yeah.
You know, it'd have to be pretty deep down. But just be careful when you move it. You know, you can take reasonable action to move it. I think what you're getting at is don't move this piece of stone and sweep behind your ball in the action of doing it. Yeah. That would be unreasonable. And just watch out that you don't cause your ball to move as well.
Yeah.
If you cause your ball to move on the bunker, you know, it's most likely that you're going to incur a penalty for that.
What are the other main changes that people are still asking you questions about in relation to the changes?
The dropping height. So you're dropping from knee height now, not shoulder height. A lot of people have had a lot of queries about, I've got a sore back. I can't lean down that far. You know, you don't have to be bending over. You can actually squat if you want to. You can be on your knees. You can be lying down. You don't actually have to be bending over from your back. A lot of people said, it should be between knee and hip height. You know, it's easier just to say knee height, and people will be there or thereabouts. I mean, your knee can stretch, you know, a fair way. So,
folks, it looks weird, but it's really easy to do.
Yeah, it's one of the easiest ones. You know, they thought about doing it from any height above the ground, as long as it wasn't touching something. And then they thought about it and they were like, that would look so stupid on the TV if someone's trying to drop exactly on a piece of pure turf just so that they can hit a 3-wood, you know, a Patrick Reed 3-wood into a green or something like that. So they were like, no, we'll get rid of that and just say knee height. Now you don't have to show that it's from your knee. It just has to be knee height when you're standing.
Yeah.
So that's one of them. And then the other one, now this is really important. This is a local rule. Now I know you don't have it at PK, but this is a local rule that clubs can bring in. I reckon I've seen about or heard of about 30 to 33% of clubs have bought this local rule in. So, you know, there's nearly 70% of clubs out there that don't have this local rule. And that is the alternative, okay, hard to get that one out, alternative to stroke and distance for a ball that's lost or a ball that's gone out of bounds.
So that includes, I had this come up on Sunday actually at Kingston Heath with a mate of mine, John, who's a member down there and was kind enough to have me down, which was nice. So the par 5, I can't remember the number, the one that runs along the side of the market gardens, and
number 12.
Number 12, there you go. And a playing partner who was actually a golf pro. There was some consternation about, he had hit it left, whether it was out of bounds or lost, and the consternation was you can only take the 2-shot penalty at the point of exit where it definitely went out of bounds, but the consternation was where if it was lost, can you do the 2-shot penalty at the point where you think it was lost? You follow me?
Yes.
So, he snap hooked at what I thought was out of bounds.
Yep.
But it could have been lost. But we just didn't know exactly where.
And they have the local rule in play there?
Oh, no, and that part I didn't know. I don't think we were playing in the comp, so no, I wasn't playing the comp. They must have the local rule because they were talking about it, and they were members of Kingston Heath, so I don't know. I wasn't playing in the comp, so for me, I was just whatever.
Let's say the situation was where the local rule had been adopted.
Yep.
Now, is there still a penalty area down the left-hand side of 12?
Yeah, much smaller, and I talked about that. I said,
it's just a creek.
Yeah.
It's basically just a drain, actually. It
Correct.
hardly ever has water in it.
Correct.
Now, so this is a very interesting situation you've got here, because if you hit it left, if it's gone into the penalty area, or you think it's gone into the penalty area, you have to have at least 95% virtual certainty that it's gone in there.
Mm-hmm.
Then you would proceed under the penalty area relief options if you can't find your ball. Or even if you could find your ball, you can proceed under the penalty area relief options. Now, part of those, or what we just talked about before, it's a red penalty area. Part of the penalty area relief options are that you can go down there and take a lateral drop within 2 club lengths for a 1-stroke penalty. Now, if you don't have that virtual certainty, you can, because there's out of bounds there and there's also long grass where you could lose your ball, you can play a provisional off the tee,
mm-hmm.
or you can just walk down there and say, and if the local rules have been adopted, you can just walk down there and go, okay, I can't find it. We don't know if it's lost or out of bounds. Just estimate it, okay? So if you think it's out of bounds, estimate that this is the point that it's out of bounds. You go to the fairway, the nearest fairway side, and then you get 2 club lengths into the fairway, plus all that area from the out of bounds back to the as far as you want to go, and you can drop your ball within that spot for it. So 2-shot penalty, you'd be playing your 4th. It's not you don't just have the fairway to drop within. You could drop it in the rough if you really wanted to.
So you can drop it 2 club lengths onto the fairway from 2 club lengths and then back to the point where you think it's lost. So that could be 20, 30 meters.
Where you think it's out of bounds.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the one for if we think it's out. If we think it's crossed the fence,
yep.
It's from the point where it's crossed the fence on an arc. So if where we think it's crossed the fence is 300 to the green, then we'd be going to the edge of the fairway 300 plus 2 club lengths, no close to the hole, and we've got that whole area back towards the tee in which to drop.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was the part that I wasn't sure of on Sunday. There you go. I've learned something now. Can you actually drop near the fairway? You can.
Yeah, you can. And then if it's lost, it's the same process, but instead of saying this is the point where it crossed out of bounds, we're just saying this is the spot where it should be. Mm-hmm. This is the exact spot where it should be. Now you do the exact same process back to the fairway,
mm-hmm.
but you also have 2 club lengths from that spot away from the fairway, so towards the fence.
Right.
So you always have 2 club lengths left, and you always have 2 club lengths right.
Gotcha.
Okay, so 2 club lengths away from the fairway, 2 club lengths into the fairway from that equidistant spot, and that's going to cost you 2, so you'll be playing your 4th now. So that's if that local rule has been adopted.
So just to re-clarify, there's 30 metres between the boundary fence and the edge of the fairway. This is the out of bounds example.
Yep.
30 metres. And in that 30 metres, it's all junk. you can bring your ball to the edge of the fairway, mark out from the, you've got 200 to go to the green. So 200 to go to the green from the edge of the fairway, two clubs across, and you can drop it on the fairway from 30 metres, from the out of bounds point, which was 30 metres directly to your side. Right.
If the local rule's in play.
If the local rule's in play, yeah. Okay. That's the part that I didn't really get fully grasp, because obviously I've never played it because it's not in play at PK, and I've not played at any other course in a competitive environment that has it in play. There you go.
You won't find it on any professional tour, I tell you that.
No, definitely not.
The main reason I say, every time I say, if the local rule is adopted, I make sure, because it came, that local rule came out, and there was a lot of people saying, it's a rule of golf now.
Yeah.
It's not a rule of golf. There's another one. If you hit your provisional, say you hit one left, and then you hit a provisional, you cannot, and you walk down there, you cannot use that E5 for your original ball. You can use the E5 for your provisional if you don't find it, but you can't use it for your original. Once you hit a provisional, you lose the option of the E5 local rule. Right.
So you can't take either or. There's no best of both worlds. You can't say, well, the provisional's actually not as good as where I get the chance to drop it for, because I only scunned my provisional 20 metres off the tee. So I'd actually rather drop up where I hit it out of bounds and take two shots. You can't do that.
Spot on. So let's go through that situation. So he's hit one left, a big ball, but left. Could be lost, not in the penalty area. Could be lost, not in the penalty area. So he goes, I'll hit a provisional. Hits a provisional just to the start of the fairway, 50 metres off the tee. But let's say they hit it not in the fairway, but in the crap, and then they not sure if they're going to find that. They now are 3 off the tee, and their only options are either A, hit another provisional, or B, take E5 if their local rule's been adopted. For the provisional. So say they did that, they dropped in, and they got to drop it in the fairway, no closer to the hole, obviously. They'd 3 off the tee plus the 2, they'd be now hitting their 6th.
Yeah, right.
And then they'd hit one right in the tea tree there and lose their ball again and walk to the next.
Oh dear, and the whole pace of play thing's out the window. Bang, gone. You got people on the tee. Oh dear, mate. There's probably a dozen other rules that we could sit down and go through. They just keep popping up into my mind as I talk and as we talk, and I think that's going to be the beauty of, if we can keep doing this type of segment where we just get straight into rules. We'll get some topics, we'll cover them off, and I think the people are going to get a lot of value out of listening to us. I now I'm talking to you, I think about it coming across, and I'll just leave you with an example of, our social golfers. I was in my business the other day, and I was talking to a chap on the putting green, and probably had one of the worst putting tremors, with his hand that I'd ever seen. It was unfortunately scary to look at, and I felt some pain for the guy, and I started talking to him, and I just wanted to make sure that he could find a putter that he enjoyed, and a couple of little tips, and I'd get the pro involved, and really trying to send him away in a better place. And he said, I've been using a broomstick putter. Oh, okay, cool. And I was immediately drawn to the fact, well, why would you want to change if you've got this tremor? Broomsticks were designed to stop that. He said, but I went to this golf tournament for MC labour hire, and my mate said, no, mate, you can't use that. So I just put it in the car. He said, because I've always carried 2 putters in case someone doesn't like me using it. And I said, well, why'd you do that? He said, well, he told me I couldn't use it because this was a corporate day and an Ambrose comp, and they wanted to win. I said, hang about, you're allowed to use a broomstick. And he was blown away by the fact that you can actually still use the broomstick. I said, the rules now are you can't anchor it, and there's a bit of consternation around that, what people view as anchoring, especially with the TV. But, mate, if you've been using a broomstick, you can use it. And he was just like, it was like his obviously I didn't sell him a putter after that, but it was like his whole world was just returned on its head, and he was going to go out and play and have some joy because he realised he could still use his putter the way that he was doing it. But he turned up to a golf comp, and his mate said, "Mate, you can't use that. Get that away. Not using that here because we want to win." And they're illegal. It was ridiculous. That's your world.
It's quite incredible, but definitely not uncommon. I mean, most people learn the rules of golf through the people they play with. They don't, and I have nothing against them. I mean, I know the resources are there. I know how easy they are to access. Interpreting them is a little bit tougher. I give them that, but I know how hard they are to access. How easy they are to access. But you just get told a myth. I actually started a thing on Golf Rules Questions about golf rules myths, and just how people just think like another one for you. You actually the myth was you're not allowed to borrow anyone else's golf balls on the golf course. So I was having a shocking day the other day with playing with you. If I'd run out of golf balls and said, "Oh, sorry guys, I'm all out of golf balls. I got to just walk to the clubhouse now." I mean, that would be a bit stupid. I would actually be able to borrow a golf ball from you, or whoever else we were playing with that day. So there's another one. You're allowed to borrow as long as it's not their ball in play, but you're allowed to borrow other people's equipment. It then becomes your equipment.
So we were talking about the difference of some of the professional golf rules and the PGA, and they're their own sort of entity in many regards. We were talking about that sort of off air, but is that the example that people might be drawing from there, where the John Daly at the Lakes circumstance comes to mind, where he just the tin cup moment where he just kept loading up and putting balls in the drink, and then he ran out of balls and said, "Right, that's it, boys, I'm out of balls," because it's different in the professional world. Is that true?
Yeah, they have to use the same ball.
Yeah.
So it's called the one ball condition.
Yeah.
That's not on the LPGA don't have that one anymore, but the PGA Tour certainly do. I actually had this happen in Fiji about 3 or 4 years ago, and a player, professional on the Thursday, was having just a shocking game, and just so happened that he was down to his last ball playing the 15th hole, which is a short par 3. So we all thought, oh, well, he'll get through that, but the 16th hole is quite a tough. It's actually the number one hardest hole on the course, so he might be needing a ride back to the clubhouse pretty soon. So then he goes with a wedge in his hand. He goes about shanking his tee shot on the par 3 15th and lost his ball. So we actually asked one of the other players. We were going around the other groups, asking the other players if they had a ball that they could spare for this player. And he wasn't using a Titleist Pro V, which everyone else is using. He was using a Shrixon Z-Star. So we only sort of found one other player out in the golf course that was using this type of ball. So we got one ball. He threw us one ball, and we got this one ball back to this player. Anyway, he'd been waiting sort of 2 minutes. So we docked him a couple of shots for undue delay, which he was a bit miffed about. But we were thinking, mate, you're having such a shocking score. Was another 2 actually matter? Anyway, he manages to sky this shot on the 16th, carried at 185 and just carried the water. Ended up hitting up near the green, chipped on and made the putt for par. And we were going, oh, wow, we were going to drug test that ball. Then I'm sitting halfway down 17, and he hooks one into the bunda on 17, and for all money, this ball was dead. I was digging in there like a rabbit and getting cut up and scratches and stuff, and I sort of stuck my hand up. They could only see my hand. I was like, oh, I found it. So I threw it back to him, and he takes this drop from point of entry and sort of hits one down. It's par 5. Hits one down there, hits another one sort of near the green, and just at the front edge holds this like 25 footer for par. We're like, oh, he's got one hole to go. He can make this, What does he do on 18? Hooks it left.
Game over.
5 minutes spent searching, and that was game over. I said, I can. You're disqualified now, but I can give you a ride back to the clubhouse, which we could see from the 18th fairway. And he said, "Oh, don't worry about it." I said, "Yeah, probably a bit of soul searching there."
Oh dear. All those skills of your 15-year-old self searching for balls coming to the fore there on the 17th hole.
Yes. And another one, just run really quickly, about the pro game versus the amateur game. On the pro circuit, it's very common to have the local rule saying that you can't practice on the putting green after you play the hole. So you'll never see a pro miss like a 6-footer, tap it in, and then drag their ball back and have another go at the 6-footer, unless you're watching match play like, well, the Dell match play, which would be on next week, or the President's Cup, which was in Australia last year. But in stroke play, it's very, very common. It's basically a hard card rule, which means it follows the players at every tournament they go to, saying that you can't practice on the putting green that you just played after you've finished. So you tell people that you can have a practice putt, and they go, "Oh, what? No, the pros never do that. You're not allowed to do that." But it's actually a local rule on their tours.
So you can have a putt after the hole. Can you have a chip? Can you go back to this? If you flood the chip as your approach, and can you go and have a little chip onto the green that you've just finished on?
Yes. Please don't unduly delay play, but you're allowed to have a chip. You wouldn't be able to have a bunker shot, but you could certainly have a chip or a putt. Okay,
so then you've had your putt, your practice putt, you have an unduly delayed play, you move to the next tee box. It's a par 3. The green is, the people on the group in front are still chipping and putting, and you've got a delay. Can you plop your ball down on the tee and chip it with your 58 degree at the tee markers and just have a bit of a chip around on the tee of the hole that you're about to play?
You certainly can. You can chip or putt around the next teeing area. Provided you haven't started play of the hole, you can chip or putt around the next teeing area.
Okay, so you can actually practice between completing the hole on the hole that you've just played and around the teeing area. Yeah, what's that? A couple of clubs in and around on the tee from the tee that you're about of the hole that you're about to play. Yep,
and I've got one more for you.
Okay, this is good. This is the stuff that people are going to go, oh right, I didn't know that.
We started on 10 at PK North last week.
Yep.
We get round to the first hole.
Yep.
There's a very large practice putting green there.
Yep.
You would be allowed to practice putting or chipping around that green as well. Between play of the 18th green and the first tee, you would be able to practice chip or putt around that practice putting green.
Okay. So talking about that example, so at Peninsula we teed off on the 10th, and there is a little small putting green next to the halfway house on the 10th.
Oh, yeah, that's right. There is too.
Yeah. So we scoot around there and we come back to the 16th, and there's a delay on the par 3. Can I go and have a little practice putt on that putting green that's part of the halfway house on the 16th?
Yes, you can.
So you can practice on the course putting greens, practice greens, in round, if the opportunity so exists and you don't unduly delay play.
Correct, and that's under 5.5B.
Oh, and see, this is where I'm starting to get excited. We're reciting numbers now. This is great. This is going to be excellent.
You wouldn't believe how many golf books I have, or rules of golf books around. I've got one in the lounge, one in the bedroom, one in the toilet, one in the car.
I love it. I've got one more. One more. It's getting too long. We're gonna wrap it up in a sec. But I've got one more.
See, this is just to quickly butt in. This will be the hardest thing we have every time we talk. Will be actually not continuing longer than we should.
No, we'll sharpen it up. It's been a good little get to know ourselves, get to know you, and get to know the absolute value that we're going to bring on a semi-regular basis. Mate, very good. I think this is going to be a good thing that we can do for everyone out there who is going to have a number of questions and also get a great deal of insight into your experience in Australia, experience around the world. Where can we find you, Blakey? Where do people go and find some information if they want to engage with you outside of the My Love of Golf podcast? How do we do that?
The best place, or the place that I seem to have built up a bit of a following, is on Instagram, and that's at golfrules.questions. Facebook, Golf Rules Questions. YouTube, Golf Rules Questions. And you can send me an email, golfrules.questions@gmail.com.
Mate, we'll put all those links into the little notes of the podcast here, and people can hook up with you if they want to. You're happy to answer any questions, yeah?
Absolutely. You're more than welcome to just ask Ross, and Ross will ask me, and we'll do it on the podcast.
Beautiful. Very, very good, mate. I really do appreciate over an hour of time. It's, as you say, it's going to be interesting to try and contain our enthusiasm for this, the hot topics of golf. Mate, I appreciate it. Thanks for joining us again. Anything more from you, mate? I think we've wrapped it up, mate. I think that's episode number 1 of the working title, title Blakey and Roscoe's Rules of Golf, or Roscoe and Blakey's Rules of Golf.
No, it's I'm happy for you to go first. That's fine. You ask the questions, and I'll knock over the answers.
Very good, mate. Very good, mate.
It's been really good, and we'll bring up some other ones, some older situations, and talk about them and how the rule may or may have not have changed. And this is going to be good.
Mate, it's going to be fun. Until next time, I'll catch you, Blakey. Very good.